everybody, and thank you for joining us. We've just gotten our live stream up and running, and we're going to be getting started promptly at 6 o'clock. It is currently 5:58, and so if you're already joining us, please feel free to share our live stream via your social media outlets, and we'll look forward to getting started.
I think we did, and I think Thomas, I think I saw something saying that you were now the host, or it might have been, yeah, it might have been. So congratulations on the new bestowed honor. I'm sure Jess will be looking to jump back in a minute.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. New to everything here. Rebecca, do you want to jump in and do the introduction, or you want to try to wait for Jesse to come back in?
I'm looking for everyone's bios, so give me a second here.
Sean, can you see the waiting room and see if Jesse's in there?
Yeah, I'm looking now. I don't see him in there. For those of you that tuned in, we're just waiting for one more Jesse Lederman, Councilor from Springfield, to join back in. He was with us and got booted a second ago, so we appreciate your patience.
I think the feed on live got stuck as well. That's what I'm seeing here.
Yeah, I'm looking now. I don't see him there. None of us are on fiber internet. Those of you that tuned in, we're just waiting for at least we are. Councilor from Springfield to join back in with us. Got booted a second ago, so we appreciate your patience.
Is he hopping back on, or do we want to restart this, considering we're not live or anything? On live got stuck as well. That's what I'm seeing here.
We'll give him a call real quick to see. I think I can hear the live feed through Thomas's. I don't know if he's got YouTube TV or YouTube up. At least I think that's still going through, or at least it seemed like it, correct?
There's
Okay.
a 3-count delay on that. It's echoing the 3 count.
Yeah, I just closed out of it. It said there was 30 people on that.
Whoa.
All right, so let's jump in, shall we?
Lisa or Rebecca, if you want, we can all just do a brief introduction around the board, and we can go from there. Oh, Jesse's back in, I believe.
Jesse's back. We'll let him connect to the audio, and we'll let him. I think he does want you each to introduce yourselves, but we'll start it with Jesse. It's no problem.
Hi, everyone. I'm back on, and I believe that the live stream is also back on. Can you guys hear and see me?
Yes.
All right. I think we are back live, and so we do apologize for that stream, but we. So thank you, everybody that's joining us. We can see we have actually built a good audience already in the live channel on YouTube.
Jesse's currently demonstrating.
Jesse Lederman.
Glad it is without fiber.
I'm Springfield City Councilor Jesse Lederman, and it's my privilege to welcome you all to tonight's virtual forum on municipal internet. In addition to welcoming you all this evening, I've also been tasked with sharing some information about how this group of elected officials and experts came together and what our goal is tonight. Last year, when it was announced that the primary internet service provider in many of our communities would implement a data cap on residential internet usage and begin charging for what, to our knowledge, was the first time additional fees for internet usage over the cap, we had all come together because it was really concerning to many of us in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, when many were relying entirely on the internet for work, education, healthcare, and so much more. And working together, we passed identical resolutions in each of our communities in opposition to arbitrary data caps. And with the announcement that data caps would be postponed by that provider until 2022, we've turned our attention to assessing internet options in our own communities. We share a collective belief that in this day and age, the internet is an essential utility and that proper protections and options should be in place to ensure affordable, fair, capable, and equitable access for all of our constituents. Which brings us to this initial conversation on municipal internet options tonight. And with that, I will allow my colleagues and panelists to introduce themselves.
My name is Rebecca Lisi. I'm Holyoke City Councilor at Large, and I'm happy to be here this evening. Thank you.
My name is my name is Sean Powers from West Springfield. I'm an at-large councilor here, born and raised. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Gina-Louise Sciarra. I'm Northampton City Council President and Councilor at Large for Northampton.
Hello, I'm Bill Dwight. I'm not one of the experts, obviously, because I'm an elected official. I'm elected as City Councilor at Large in the city of Northampton.
Hi, I'm Rosemary Sandlin, and I'm a city councilor in Agawam.
I'm Caitrin Ferriter. I'm the Key Accounts Sales Manager at Westfield Gas and Electric, Whip City Fiber.
And Sean?
Yes, I'm Sean Fitzgerald. I'm the General Manager for South Hadley Electric Light Department and also Fibersonic, which is our new gig speed fiber service.
Tim?
And I'm Timothy Paul, President and CEO of OmniPoint Technology.
And Thomas Flaherty.
Flaherty, General Manager of the Westfield Gas and Electric, Whip City Fire.
Fantastic. And we'll pass it over to Councilor Sean Powers with our first question.
Very much, Jesse. So the first question tonight for the panelists is going to be, what exactly is internet fiber and how does it differ from what is mainly available in our communities today? And each panelist is going to have about 1 minute to answer if you can squeeze that answer into that time frame.
Yeah, it is an easy answer. Internet fiber is simply a different mode of transporting data. Fiber optics are glass instead of versus copper or cable. It's much faster than copper. It's much faster than cable or DSL. And so it is another means by which data can be transmitted at high speed. And it's the wave of the future.
Sean, you want to jump into?
Sure. Yeah. Same thing that Timothy said, you know, fiber is glass, has a glass core, basically transmit light rather than electric signal. Unlike, you know, the traditional copper coaxial wires that most towns experience today. Couple of things, you know, about fiber is that fiber is considered the gold standard, if you will, of broadband now, mainly because of its symmetrical abilities to have upload and download speeds that are the same, and also the infinite capability to increase the load, if you will, on the fiber cable based on your equipment.
Tom, do you want to add anything?
Sure. With fiber, over the past 5 years, the technology has really blossomed here in Western Massachusetts, with the spread here from Westfield and then out to the hill towns. The hill towns have been served through mass broadband, through a middle mile structure. They carry the transmission lines, whether it's mass broadband or another company called Crown Castle. And then the other communities are now owning their own fiber internet capabilities and able to control the volume, which is, you know, the gigabit speed for most of those facilities, and also control price in those same areas. That's one of the additional benefits of municipal broadband structure.
And Caitrin, did you want to add anything to what the other panelists had talked about in terms of fiber and kind of the difference between what is being offered currently in a lot of communities and what could be offered?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I come from the customer service side, and how we compare it to our competitor is that it's up to a gig. Like Sean said, it's symmetrical. And I know in our previous meetings, Sean emphasized on the Internet of Things. So you're going to see much higher speeds with gig to the home. And then in a competitive market, that's the selling point. We just emphasize on the fact that you're going to have your security systems. And then if everyone just counts the number of devices, I know in the future the devices are adding up. So it's more bandwidth for the devices to meet the needs of your home and everyone in it. And then it's good for telemedicine, telehealth, streaming right now. Definitely, it's for the future, the fiber.
Great. And for our second question, we'll turn things over to Councilor Rebecca Lisi.
Thank you, Jesse. I think we'll continue in the round robin style, and we'll ask Sean to go first this time, followed by Tom, Caitrin, and then ending up on Timothy. And we'll keep in that order as we ask the other questions with the new lead. So this question is, what is the difference between a municipal option and what is currently available in our communities? So again, Sean, starting with Sean.
Sure, great. Well, a municipal option like South Hadley's Fibersonic that we're deploying is owned by the customers, right? So that means that the customers, not the shareholders, own the company. Municipal-owned fiber deployments like the ones you see in Westfield, the ones you see in South Hadley and Chicopee, really, they require the municipalities to invest the capital to launch and deploy. So that's a major difference, is that the large incumbent providers, they have to launch and construct in some towns, but then they own it, and therefore they reap the reward and the benefit. So in towns like ours, where we have a municipal light plant and we've assumed the risk, and that's another big difference, is that MLPs have leaped off the edge and taken that risk for these fiber deployments. And, you know, the reason that you want to do something like that is it gives you the control, it gives you the ability to reap the reward and also be in the driver's seat and then have some say in how your plant is constructed and how your customers are served versus, you know, shareholder, large incumbents. Really, they drive the bus and they go where the profits are, and more of a larger corporation approach.
So just to expand on our stays, municipal light plan.
I'm here.
You can't hear me, Rosemary?
Not well.
Okay, sorry. But to expand on Sean, a municipal light plan or MLP is something, you know, the legal term for a community to start the process to go into this business. One of the keys for Westfield, for even us as a muni gas and electric, is the fact that we can bring in non-tax revenue. So if you're going into the hill towns, they're able to pay for the plant through the profit or through the cost of the internet, but they're able to also bring in non-tax revenue. So in the future, if you see a West Springfield or an Agawam or Northampton or Holyoke or Springfield get into this, you know, the main goal is to stabilize pricing, bring a better product to the residents or the owners, as Sean said, in that community. A secondary goal is once you get to the point of paying off your debt service, you have that capability to have non-tax revenue as a bonus, and then to continue to build out. That's what we did here in Westfield. Was we started with a portion of the city, took out a bond for $15 million, built that out with 70% of the city. Now with the revenues that we're generating through that, we're expanding to reach 100% of the city in the next 3 years.
And I'm up next. So I think compared for the municipals, I think it just goes back to the local customer service. And I know my generation, we emphasize on shop small, local, and then I think it's just that different customer service tactic. So I know once we pick up the phones, it's familiar faces that you're dealing with. You're dealing with people that you know, rather than the investor-owned utilities. You're just familiar. I know you're walking in the street. Basically, Sean's a walking billboard for Fibersonic. Tom and I are walking billboards for Whip City Fiber. And there's just a different involvement when you are owning your own municipal network. And so we're in a competitive market, and we didn't know if we would get the take rate because we're competing against Comcast. I know the hill towns that we're working with, they don't have anything else. They're either unserved or underserved. And we do have a very good take rate. Basically, after the total passings, we're about 50% of customers have converted over to Whip City Fiber. I think some of the struggles that we're continuing to work with is just education, and people it's change. So they just want assistance on the change. And we've done a good job by doing marketing events. And I don't want to say hand-holding, but just educating the customer on what their issues are or what they need further help with. And to be honest, we don't have many customers disconnecting service unless they're moving. So we're very proud of that.
And Caitrin, you just mentioned the term take rate, and just so that everybody at home who may be unfamiliar with what that means, can you explain it briefly?
Yeah, so basically for simplicity, if we have 3,000 passings, so fiber is passing 3,000 homes, the number of customers that have signed up at 50% would be 1,500 customers. So that's Great. Successful, especially in a competitive market, and the number keeps growing. And then in the hill towns, it's much higher. It's 80 to 85%, we would say.
Wow, that's great. And last but not least, Timothy.
Oh yeah, everyone said the wonderful things. The option is that the municipal city or municipality actually owns the infrastructure. And by owning the infrastructure, they also have other alternatives. For instance, they can choose to not be in the business of being an ISP, an internet service provider, and actually they have the choice to lease out or choose internet service providers that would operate within that infrastructure that the city or municipality owns. That's a key piece because it makes it competitive and it keeps the price within a great price range and affordable. The other thing is when you look at today's digital age, everybody's cutting the cord, cutting the cable cord. So streaming and all of the other amenities that go along, or verticals, I might say, that can be offered on a fiber infrastructure, meaning lighting up your street cameras, EMS, and that kind of technology, home security. The municipality has the options whether or not to allow a company that could come in and deploy on their network for home security, or several companies, and or streaming television, which is really competitive today. And so I agree with all of those. I mean, we're doing projects down in East Hartford and other parts of the country where we're helping cities build their own municipal infrastructure and deploy their infrastructure. And this is key. But the biggest thing is the cost to the municipality. I heard Westfield talk about the bond they had to issue. You do bear the cost of that expense, and it is passed on to the taxpayer. But in the end, the take rate, if you get that take rate, I mean, the passes are great. You get that take rate, that ROI for that city and that community can in turn pay for that network and that infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. Thanks everyone for your responses. I want to ask one follow-up question about the take rate, however, just because it came up in this conversation here. Is the take rate 50% at 50% successful because of the market? Or is it would it be particular to each individual community or market that you would be in, or is the take rate variable?
I think.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say I think it's variable depending on what the market is. But I know, as the saying goes, I'm a little echoing. That's okay. Once you build it, they will come. I do think that a lot of people, they don't think fiber is coming. And then once we release the area, and it's similar in the hill towns, once they see the trucks rolling, then they're ready to sign up for service. But we continue to, if you will, our pass bys, we continue to get new customers coming in. A lot of them are like refer a friend. So maybe it's the older generation because they're not comfortable just yet. But then maybe their grandchildren are assisting them converting over to fiber. So I do think the market, you'll see that the younger generations, they sign up quicker than the older generations, but eventually we convert over some of them.
Right. And just to piggyback off what you said, not only do residential customers utilize the fiber infrastructure, the business take rate is yet another market within that infrastructure. And so you have businesses that really can capitalize. If a municipality has a fiber infrastructure, they can also attract the kind of businesses and stimulate their economy. So it's done. We do market analysis based on age, based on the businesses, and then we can kind of get a take rate as to who's going to be taking that fiber. But as you said, 50% is a great number. Whoever's getting 50%, they're doing great.
And one adder to that, Rebecca, is I look at take rate a little bit differently, and that's a payback on the investment. When you're looking at it from us as a municipality, and Sean was involved with this back at 6-7 years ago here in Westfield, was what take rate would actually pay back our debt service. And that was calculated that we could turn a profit at approximately 30% take rate when you were looking at those passing. The profit at that point was a 6 to 7 year process before you turned into positive revenue. However, with that higher percentage, when you're looking at 40 to 50% plus our work in the hill towns, that's come a lot sooner for Westfield. So then Westfield's able to build out the rest of the city much quicker than was originally anticipated.
Thanks, everybody. And our next question comes from Northampton City Council President Gina-Louise.
Hi. So in your experience, what have been the technical, the legal, and the community steps to establish a municipal fiber option? And we're going to go in that same order. Is that right? So Sean up first.
Okay, thank you, Gina. The largest challenge for me in my experience in both working in Westfield and working here in South Hadley is that establishing a municipal fiber option at the town leadership level or the municipal light plant level is the risk tolerance, is getting folks to clear that hurdle of dealing with that risk, because everything is hanging on that take rate. Launching an internet business, especially in a town with a pre-existing provider, can be overwhelming. So many of the leaders in that town, many of you who are grappling with this, I mean, it's a big decision, and the cost can be overwhelming. And so many towns have placed this on the ballot. And typically what follows is the incumbent providers will shortly thereafter or during launch a campaign telling you how many of these projects fail and how they don't succeed. But what they don't tell you is how many of these that are being successful. And I think that this forum is kind of expressing that there are more successful projects. And technical wise, you have to plan, design, construct. You have to have a competent staff. You have to have people who can do make ready work on the poles and the wires, and then in the home and the customer service and the marketing. So there's a whole gamut of issues. But to me, the largest challenge is getting over that hurdle, getting the town leadership to commit and invest the capital. And as time rolls on here, less and less risk is there, because nationwide broadband communities shows a 50% take rate in incumbent towns, and then in underserved towns it's 80%, and that's dead spot on with what they're seeing in Westfield, and it's very close to what we're approaching in South Hadley.
Thank you. Tom?
Yeah, Sean hit the nail on the head. When you look at the process of becoming a municipal light plant, I don't want to say it's an archaic term as far as municipal light plant, because you're not an electric utility, you're not necessarily a gas utility either. You're just becoming, you just want that capability to become a process under the Mass Chapter 164 laws. So when you become an MLP, that gives you the capability to have broadband, gives you the capability, if you want to someday, to purchase your electrical infrastructure or your natural gas infrastructure, which is a whole nother animal. But with this, you can actually build out your process. That's what it allows your infrastructure and give you a level of control. When you look at this area, there's been hardly any to the home improvements by the incumbent, which in most areas is either Comcast or Charter. There's been in some infrastructure improvement way prior to the home, but there's no fiber options out in this area other than right now municipal fiber. Agawam has a secondary option that's been proposed, but even at that, that's the advertisement on that site is a 300 megabit per second option. Most of the fiber I know for Fibersonic, Whip City Fiber, is at a 1 gigabit option, which and it's a real number. I mean, when I had Comcast here in Westfield, I was paying for 250 megabits per second. My up and down was about 11 megabits per second when you ran an speed test. Same day when I ran Whip City Fiber, it was 700 up, 700 down, and that was wireless. So it's the real numbers. You don't realize how much speed or how important that is until you have a technical call. I know we talked about it last week, but there was 25 or 26 devices connected in my own home. So we have 4 children, my wife and I, and between the number of TVs, computers, laptops, iPads, iPhones, everything that was going, and we never had any hiccup, any blip until my son had his Xbox plugged in to a Cat5 cable, and he was running it wirelessly, so it was running it an endless loop, which was sucking down the data. Once that was corrected, everything was back up and flying on. So when Caitrin was talking about the doctor's appointments and things of that nature online, the at-home schooling, and whether that's going to continue in the future. That's going to be more of an option now in the future, where school systems are having Chromebooks and things of that nature that they're distributing. And if you have this fiber capability, it is a great piece and a great tool. And on the flip side, it's also a great tool from the school side going back out, where you're not having. John has this little thing where he likes to spin his finger. You don't have that little bubble coming out on the screen, and for those delays. So that being said, the technical hurdles. It's how do you learn to watch TV again? I have an antenna at my house for local television. It comes in crystal clear, better than cable. But I think I have 40 channels, including bilingual channels, Univision, things like that are available for some people that are targeted. You have home shopping network and things like that are now available over the air like that. But if you're able to press the home button and go to Amazon Prime or Netflix or Hulu or things of that nature, there's educational pieces out on YouTube that just show you how to stream from home. Everything is a lot easier.
Thank you, Tom. Caitrin.
Oh, thank you. So going back to what Sean had mentioned on the design and engineering. So my role at Westfield Gas and Electric is I'm the liaison for the Hill Towns. So basically we worked with them start to finish on how to build their own network. Just emphasizing, like Sean mentioned, design and engineering. You do have to register to attach to the poles. I know now I look at poles and they all have a little history to it, but then you have to attach for fiber for the poles, and then you go out to procurement. So you go out to bid for the contractors when it comes to construction and materials, and also the in-home fulfillment of the services when it comes to the installations. But we work hand in hand with the Hill Towns, and they do a walkthrough. So basically, I'll just use a town, for example. They walk at each home, each premise, to make sure they capture each potential dwelling unit. That's the way that we refer to it. And then what they do is they group that cluster to about 265 passings. But what's critical in the design is you future-proof it. So you put spare fibers in case there's new construction coming up. So that's definitely critical. I know in one of the towns, we did the design 2.5 years ago, and then they actually have 15 new homes that were built. So we made sure that there was allocated fiber for each empty parcel. So that's definitely critical when you build your fiber network. And then here in Westfield, there's 97 different fiber service areas. And when we released it, like Tom had mentioned, we wanted to make sure we got the revenue, but we did it based on demand and construction costs. So then we deployed groups of fiber service areas at one time, and then we marketed to those folks. But you definitely want to do, it's a critical approach. Tom refers to it as the SMART approach. And actually, back in the day, Sean Fitzgerald, we were working hand in hand on the pilot area, we referred to it. So based on the success of the pilot area, then we deployed the next phases. And we've been quite successful, but it's a lot of hard work and dedication. And I know, just going back to the Hill Towns, we were the light at the end of the tunnel. They didn't think it was possible, but the first critical step is the municipal light plant, establishing yourself as a MLP.
Thank you, Caitrin. And Timothy. Oh, you're muted, Timothy.
Just to piggyback off what they said, it's commendable to see what you're doing. The technical part is obviously a lot of work, the design and the deployment and the build out. But more importantly, the town or the municipality controls all the right of ways and the public ways. And so as a municipal town or community, you control the road right of ways and roadways, etc. The community buy-in that we found has been as a result of the verticals, the other additional services that you offer. I mean, if a person's going to switch from the traditional internet service provider, they're going to want to see the same or experience some of the same quality of life experiences, such as the streaming television and all those other things that go along with it at an affordable price. And I think that's what fiber does. It allows you to do that. at an affordable rate. There's another part of it that the municipality could do, and we've done it, and we're actually doing it right now. It's a private-public partnership. And with those private-public partnerships, the developer or the internet service provider builds out the infrastructure of the network, and the municipality actually owns the network, and they operate on that particular network. It mitigates a lot of the legal part of it, because a lot of that legal risk is on the ISP as versus on the municipality. But one way or the other, the services that you offer those customers are going to be a key, as she says, to that take rate, and they're going to really have a better experience, a quality experience, because streaming is just the way to go today.
Thank you.
Our next question comes from Bill Dwight.
So actually, you all brilliantly answered the question that I was going to ask. And so if everyone will bear with me, I'm going to go rogue a little bit. I would imagine a lot of people attending this and participating in this or watching this have emerged from COVID and the COVID pandemic a little wiser or a little more aware of what the value of broadband access is. I mean, before we just used to, as Sean, I think, said earlier, we used to think of cable as cable. It was TV, it was home shopping network, it was a cable package. But folks now understand that this is a critical utility, a critical lifeline to education, as healthcare, banking, work, business, emergency services, everything that we find essential in the community. And I suspect that people are here trying to figure out, is there an alternative for Comcast or for Charter or for whomever they're actually subscribers to? And I think you guys made an excellent case. But I think one of my concerns is that we get a little wonky in our descriptions and explanations, because the problem is that probably a lot of folks coming to this are just like me. I mean, I get an airplane and I take it on faith that it's going to fly because smart people told me it was going to, and it does fly and it's great. But I have no idea why it does, and I don't care as long as it gets me up and gets me down. I think in the same attitude, that's how we should continue this conversation, to make it a little more accessible for folks to understand what it is they need. And you guys have actually done a very good job. Fortunately, my previous conversations with you have prepared me for the ability to understand most of what you're saying. But if you could describe in the simplest of terms the upside of having a municipally managed utility like this, now that we are so reliant on these services that they provide.
Okay, I'll go. We'll start with the plane. It's propulsion with lift, and sorry. I'm glad you're laughing, Bill. That's the first step. But no. So once the system's operating and running, I think one of the major things, and Caitrin touched on it earlier, is it's local. For us in South Hadley, where you're calling our customer service, which is soon to be 24 hours a day for fiber and for our gas and electric side, where you call up and Caitrin Ferriter answers the phone and says, "Hey Bill, how you doing? King Street's out. You got something going on up there. We'll send James and Kata right up to go work on it." And it's everything's local. That's the upside of Lisi Fiber. That's the upside of Fibersonic. That's the upside of Holyoke G&E. That's one of the keys of our gas and electric side. If there's an issue and your natural gas is out at your home, you can call Westfield Gas and Electric, and just had a report. Our response time is 22 minutes on average last year. So our side on fiber is the same. We call our customer service, and we have our technicians take their trucks home at night, and they respond. They actually, a couple of them actually live in the hill towns, so they don't have to come all the way back to Westfield, take a half hour, pick up the truck, and go back away. You know, for Comcast, they're calling out to Andover, North Andover, or maybe out of the country for their call center. So we're focusing now on local overnight right now from 11 o'clock at night to 7 in the morning. We are using national service because we average 4 calls or something during that time frame. But now with the possibility of expanding into more local communities like yours, we're looking for that that 24-hour a day area. The upside that South Hadley has and Westfield has is we have a billing system. I know for our billing system costs like $3 to $4 million for a billing system. If a community has to go out and do that, that's a huge expense. You already have that here. You don't have to create customer service. We already have that here. You don't have to create the technical service. We already have that here. If you need help with the technical side from your router or internal wiring, we have that expertise here as well. So that's the upside with going local, is all of that customer service and the technical service is all right here in Western Mass. In the case of storm, we're local, so we have storm contracts, we have backup contracts with other contractors to come and help us to assist in the communities that we're serving. So it's not a case where Eversource loses power or National Grid in Northampton loses power, and you're hoping to be somewhere closer to the top of the list, depending on how often you complain, to get your power back on in time. Here with the municipals, we're here, we get out there and we're back online so much quicker than the larger companies.
The other part of what he said, and I don't know if it's been addressed, but I don't know what you're doing in Westfield, but once that fiber optic is laid and deployed, the advantages for that municipality far exceed just the residential or business customers who utilize the fiber, because it costs just pennies more to lay fiber that can also be leased for other infrastructures. That's another revenue that a city or town can take advantage of, because that fiber can be leased and it's already an infrastructure that's in place. But to your advantage in Westfield, where other cities like Springfield may not have a gas and power, a light side of it, you have an infrastructure already, a knock, so to speak, that can answer the phone calls, that can do those things. Cities that don't have that need to be prepared to bring that on, and that is an expense in terms of the CRM, the billing, and those other things that you probably need to look at and be very aware that is a cost, and that training those folks for tier 1 and tier 2 support, technical support, they already have an infrastructure. If you're a city or town that does not have that same infrastructure, there is an additional cost for build out on that. I just wanted to make that key point.
Yeah, and I was just going to add a couple things. From the municipal light plant, there is a benefit working MLP to MLP. I know we always work with Sean, but then what we do with the hill towns, I always refer back to that because I look at you as town 21, if you will. But with the hill towns, then we have the buying power of municipal MLP to MLP. But then going back to Bill's first question, I think of it on a customer service perspective, is who am I talking to and what's their pain point? I know a lot of people, it comes down to cost. So why do they want the fiber network compared to what they're currently having with the competitor? I know when it comes to cost on our bill, you're not going to get rental fees when it comes to the router. There's no taxes and fees, and we just sell it at no contracts. So because people, as soon as you say contracts, they're hesitant to convert over. So we say no contracts, we're here. And I just want to touch upon Tom with the local, they trust in us. That's a key factor, is the trust and the familiar faces. So going back to the trust. And then we just emphasize on cutting the cord. So it goes back to education. So it's constantly evolving. I know 5 years ago when Sean and I were working together, when he was my boss, we didn't convert people over because you couldn't stream sports. So as years went by, then more and more people converted over because it evolved. And then now the phone systems, the phones are dying, kind of a dying item. So I know we do offer voice over IP, but it was interesting. I had an aha moment at one of our marketing events in the hill towns, because someone chimed in and they said, you don't need a telephone, a phone system to call overseas. You can FaceTime, you can Snapchat video, you could do Zoom. So you really don't need a phone system anymore. So it's just evolving, but I think it depends on which customers you're talking to, if sports is critical to them, or if their computer, if they're constantly working on their desk, then you can hardwire it for the fiber. But I definitely think the fiber optic municipally owned network is just future proof.
Yeah, and I'll make this brief. I'll just add, your question, Bill, is very important. You use the plane, you just accept it, right? It's the same thing with internet. People are just accepting what they've had for years. And this is about investment in your future and being proactive versus reactive. And the pendulum shift from COVID with, from needing more bandwidth was already happening, but COVID just sprinkled gasoline on the fire. And so it's happening sooner. And by 2030, a family of four is going to need 2 gigs symmetrical. So, to your point, this is probably the most important point, is that is good enough just good enough? No, you need to invest in your community, because internet is the new electricity in the 21st century. It's that critical. And COVID, people working at home, telemedicine, what we're doing tonight, Zooming, it's all dependent on good bandwidth. And if you don't have it, you will suffer. You will lose tax revenue. You will lose business. You'll lose a number of things. And so a lot of these MLP electric light plants have said, yep, we're going to do it. And so this is going to be the single most highest year of investment in fiber in the history of telecommunications. And that's another fact from the broadband community. So kudos to you for being proactive and participating in this, but hopefully that answers your question.
I guess I'm up next. I knew very little about fiber until Jesse contacted me. We passed a piece of legislation, just like you did in Springfield and other communities. And my mayor decided to have a task force, which I'm on. So I've talked to, Tom before and Katrina. But my question is 2-part. What is the typical cost for the development of such an option, and how is it financed? And the second part of it is what new revenue sources might be available in the near future to support development of networks? One of you jump in.
I think it's Katrine's turn to start this one.
Oh, geez, the GMs, they're the ones that figure out the dollar amount. I just sell it. No, so I'll talk to it, not for the borrowing perspective, but I'll talk to it on the design and engineering. So basically you put together, this is just layman's terms, not technical at all, but basically the distribution plant mileage. So you want to definitely calculate the plant miles for the distribution network. So that's a calculation. Another cost factor is the make ready, and that is a big unknown. So just to describe what the make ready is, so that's actually attaching to the electric poles. So they have to make the pole ready. So that cost, it does require dollar amounts. And then that's one of the unknowns when it comes to the time frame for that work to get completed for you to actually attach the fiber. And then the next step is the procurement, and you get those costs based on the design and engineering for the labor plus the materials. So for procurement, you go out to bid, and then the lowest qualified bidder, that will be the cost when it comes to the distribution network. But you also have to include the drops to the home. So for the drops to the home, you have to include, is it underground, is it overhead? How much is it to serve each potential dwelling unit? So we put together a premise planning report. And then some of the towns, they have an allowance, a drop allowance. So at that time, and that all goes out to the town vote, how much can they budget for? So that's also a cost factor. And then another cost factor that's included is the network components. So where is the heartbeat of the network? Where's the hub? So for the network components, I know here in Westfield, we have 3 different hubs, if you will. So each town is different. One of our larger towns that we're working with in Otis, they have 2 hubs. So the fiber to the homes are fed from those 2 hubs. So those are all calculations that you'll have to add up, and then Tom will go get the loan and I'll sell it and get a 50% take rate. And then
I'll just follow up on Caitrin for a little bit more information for Westfield. We self-borrowed about $6 million from ourselves, from Westfield Gas and Electric. And then we bonded for about another $15 million. So we're 21 million out of pocket into it now. But with the profits that we're making, our total build out cost is estimated to be just over $30 million. So, but our profits over the next couple of years are going to carry that out, so we don't have to do any more bonding. So as far as smart growth here in Westfield, we started with a few FSAs on our own. We had that money coming in, which was kind of a trickle at that point. We then expanded with a $15 million bond that allowed us to hit 70% of the city. And then now, we have our last $8 to $9 million of build outs over the next 3 to 4 years. So that gives you kind of an idea. The one caveat to Westfield is, if you look at the expanse of Westfield, it's a big little city. We still have a kind of large farming community, so that's spread out. That can also develop into future fiber service areas. When you look at Agawam, for example, Rosemary, the reason why you have another company that wants to go in there, Elko, you have 80% of your city that's overhead served. So that means the wires are above ground. We haven't had a ton of development in the past few years, which would have all been underground. But they're willing to make their investment in only the overhead section of town. They don't want to do the underground construction, which costs a little bit more. So that's one of the negatives of that. The other side is they're also just bringing in. It's just going to be another company that's similar to the Comcast that you don't have control over the data limits. But so for Westfield all in, we're looking at $30 million a year, or $30 million total investment, and we're not seeing any problem at all with meeting our debt service.
I would say that it would also depend on the type of technology that you are using to deploy your infrastructure. For instance, in East Hartford, where we're deploying, and in Kenosha, Wisconsin, where we're headed in another deployment project, we're doing something called micro trenching, and I'm sure you've heard of it. And micro trenching is a fast deployable underground. I think it's a foot underground, not even usually the utility side of the road, which is a fast and effective way to deploy a network underground, which I think is really a new wave of the future. But on top of that, I think where Westfield and other cities are advanced and others probably are not, you may look at entertaining a public-private partnership where the city or the municipality does still own the infrastructure and can cap any kind of rates that would be done or offered on that network. And so, for instance, where we are, we have a lot of our private money that is backed by the pension funds or others. So it's not a taxpayer expense. It is, but it's still a private-public partnership. The municipality or that town will still own the infrastructure. Our investment is to operate on that infrastructure, to take the risk away from the municipality, but yet they own the infrastructure, and it's called an open network. So the city or municipality can allow any other provider to operate on that network, but their cost, there's no bond to them, there's no taxpayer dollars cost associated with that, and they still have the benefit of actually owning the network over the course of time. So I think that it's just another way that we've done it, an approach that we've done it, as opposed to bonds being issued and taxpayer dollars being used to actually build the infrastructure. But either way, you do get a return on the investment.
I won't go too deep with this because everybody answered it already, but it's 15 million to 35 million for most of the towns in Western Mass. I mean, when you boil it down, a town South Hadley size is roughly 15 million. We have 8,000 customers, 92 miles of poles and wires. You go to a town like Westfield and it's more like, 30 million. So that's the range you're in. And then it depends on who's managing it, constructing it, and overseeing it, because mistakes can happen quickly, and pathway can be your biggest nightmare. If you have bad pathway and you can't get through, you can't get constructed, your project can skyrocket. And so that's the most important consideration, that when you have a construction partner that you hire, make sure you have a lot of faith in them and confidence in them, because some may just walk away from neighborhoods and say, yeah, we were going to do that, but we're not anymore. It's too expensive. And that's another reason that municipal light plants want to retain control, is because you're going to disappoint a lot of people if someone says we're going to invest and then they don't come and do it.
I just want to tell Jesse that is not the cost for the city of Springfield or you in Northampton or Holyoke. There's a bigger cost. So I just want to have a little fun. It's for the smaller towns.
Absolutely. Agreed.
Message received. So thankfully we have a little bit more time with our panelists to ask follow-up questions or just continue the conversation. So counselors, I'll look to you for other questions you have. And Jesse, do you have one?
Yeah, thank you all so much. I mean, we're learning a lot here tonight too, and it helps us as we, talk with residents in our communities about, the potential of this future investment development of this technology. I think that one of the questions, though, that I'm sure folks who are watching, we've had a very good live audience following us on YouTube this whole time, is similar to kind of what Bill asked, but getting a little bit more in the weeds on it. I think what folks really want to know is if their municipality steps up and makes this investment, right, whether it's through any of the various means that you all have talked about, which are generally, the same thing, and we know it'll be a different investment in every community. But what can they expect to see in terms of, are they going to be paying more or less than they pay now? What is the data showing us on that? And what is the service going to be like? Is it going to be better, or is it going to be worse, or is it going to be the same? Because I think folks that are at home, that's really what they want to know, is if they're willing to have their community make this investment, will they get better service at less of a cost, or will they get at least comparable service at less of a cost? What's the benefit there? And we can maybe open it up to all of you to share your thoughts on that.
I can jump in. I think on the cost side of things, when I'm working, let's just say I'm trying to sell it to somebody, is what are you currently paying with your current provider? And do you really need all those TV channels if you're getting the premier service? So let's just say in Westfield, it's $69.95, so $70. And then you just stream. So you find the services that you want a la carte, and then you just do a price comparison to what you're currently using. And then I think it goes back to the local support. So that's the selling factor, and then you're reinvesting in the community. And then I know what we did in Westfield and in the Hill Towns is just, it goes back to education and just doing a little bit of hand holding. So we do have multiple marketing meetings. So then we can answer those questions. We can get people excited. And I know we did the pilot area to make sure that we were successful. So at that time, I know Sean and I were walking through different areas, hanging up door hangers. And the pilot area, what we did in Westfield, this isn't really answering your question about subscribers, but we did market with the commercial customers, kind of the lower income, a newer development, but we just had a geo cluster that reached all different markets. But I think a lot of people, it goes back to cost savings, and you're now giving back to the municipals rather than the investor-owned utilities. I know our comparison when it comes to, I don't want to call Eversource out, but if you open up different bills, they have different service charges. And then when you open up a Whip City Fiber and a WG&E bill, there's no additional charges. So that's our selling point here in Westfield, but it does go back to cost and what are you currently paying and how can we save you money?
And the service is absolutely better, I'm certain. We're doing some work in Connecticut. The infrastructure is an old copper cable, and the quality of the service versus fiber, the customer would get a much superior quality of service, symmetrical speeds, higher speeds, less latency, greater opportunities for expanding their bandwidth. I mean, it's not even comparable to some of the old copper that is still antiquated in the ground. So to answer that question, Jesse, the service is much superior. It's quality. It's fiber, and it's the wave of the future. And all of the other things you can do on that network, especially looking at the future, IoT, all of the other things that you can do with that network, gives that customer an actual, real good customer experience.
Yeah, and I'll just say this, that it depends on who's operating your internet service provider, right? Because if they want a higher return on their investment, they're going to charge more. If they want a lower return on investment, they're going to charge less. And when we set the price for these things, and I remember setting the price for Westfield and setting the price for fiber in South Hadley, it's the 4 Ps. It's price, promotion, placement, product, right? So you have to figure out what your 4 Ps are. You have to understand how to price it. You have to understand your competition. You have to understand how you're going to impact take rate. And then you set it. And then once you set it, you then see how effective you are and you can adjust. But we don't play the game of bait and switch of giving you a price and then 12 months from now, jack you up for another, $20, $50. And that's what people are fed up with. And so it really, when people ask the question, will it be as good? Our customers are raving about the service and about the product and about the way we treat them. And I would encourage you that if you make this decision, that you make sure you pick a vendor who understands all these things.
Thank you.
Can I just jump in a minute? Because I know we're talking about small cities and the hill towns, but Tim, what do you envision for Springfield? Because I know that Jesse must be really interested in how you can bring fiber to Springfield. Can you talk about that? It's a large city. It's a lot of difficulties, a lot of apartment buildings, multifamily dwellings. Can you talk to that issue?
Certainly, and we've already made a presentation before certain city council subcommittees, and then about a month ago to the mayor and his entire team on our approach to a public-private way to bring fiber to Springfield, Massachusetts. And it's a pretty, unlike the 30 million, you're looking somewhere in the tune of 100 to 120 million, which is a different cost altogether. But at the same time, you've got a larger population, you can get a larger take rate, and the economic benefits of having a city with an infrastructure of fiber it's a no-brainer. So we've already made a proposal to the city of Springfield, and they are now looking at some of the other towns that we've been working with, Salem, Massachusetts being one, Haverhill being another that we're working with, and looking at how that RP process was and seeing if they can model that to see what we can do in Springfield.
Thank you.
Okay, Rebecca is the next question.
Thank you. So I've heard Timothy say this a couple of times this evening, and I feel like I've heard a few others of you say that fiber is the future. And yet I see a big 5G sign behind your head, Timothy. And I wonder, for those communities that have not yet developed their fiber infrastructure, is it too late? Is 5G the next big thing and we sort of like missed the opportunity to build out that fiber network? Or what would you say to, sort of drive home the point that you made earlier about fiber is the future?
Well, you see the 5G behind my head, probably because there's various different types of fiber deployment, right? And so my colleagues would understand this in the spectrum of millimeter wave, which is a 5G or 5G 70, 80, or 90. It's a licensed FCC spectrum, which is where a lot of the carriers are have either are at millimeter wave or they're what we call CBRS, which is where they're buying auctions just so they can deploy their 5G. It's another way to deploy. But there are means of delivery of fiber in major cities like San Francisco. Google just bought out the company that did it in San Francisco with a wireless fiber network, which is considered a 5G network. Everything was wireless, point to multipoint. Every home received a wireless fiber connection, gigabyte speeds, redundancy, no failure. Google bought the company, is now replicating what they're doing. So that 5G does not mean 5G just in terms of the carriers in the mobility, but also fiber in the millimeter wave spectrum is considered can be considered a 5G deployment.
I'll touch on that as well. So when you look at Massachusetts, so Verizon has had FiOS capability. You hear Spectrum 1 gigabit internet. You hear Comcast advertising. However, for years, I remember about 10 years ago when FiOS was out and calling saying, hey, I really like that instead of Comcast. And they're like, yeah, we're not coming to your area. And I'm like, oh, so when are you gonna be? And no, sorry, sir, we're not coming to your area. And it meant ever. I was just talking with one of the hill towns that we're working with, and they're concerned with the same exact question, 5G. And I'm like, you've had fiber in your town for 2 years, and you think 5G is going to come now. And he's like, well yeah, it's coming. And I'm like, you didn't have cable. You literally 2 years ago had 3 megabits per second call up internet that had the fax going. You're going back. I grew up in West Springfield, and we had that back in the day, and that was the late 80s. We were working with that, and the concern was, oh, what's that next level going to be? And we're not gonna see that in my view, in honest opinion, we're not gonna see that here in Western Mass, because we don't have that population for that infrastructure improvement. That you're gonna see it all in the big cities first, and then slowly come out. So by the time 5G comes here, that it's gonna be at 12G or 20G, because we're not in a market that's serviceable at that point, where they're going to return that profit that they.
Okay, thank you. Bill.
So, thank you. You've all been remarkably polite and respectful of the telecoms, and good on you for that. I'm not going to be so nice. The fact is that the Comcast of the world actually have enjoyed state-sanctioned monopolies, non-competitive contracts, and this came out of an antiquated concept when we actually started introducing cable to various regions and what essentially what most of us are using right now. And as such, all the people who participate in these, the elected officials have probably participated in ascertainment and establishment of a contract with these guys, and they're 10-year contracts. And you really don't get much of a say in the contract. I mean, you can say what you want, but the fact is that they could say, well, yeah, we're not coming, forget it. You don't want to sign a contract? Enjoy watching Channel 2, because that's all you're going to get. So the fact that we are in a significant transition point, and what you guys are offering is an opportunity. Well, actually, a former mayor of Northampton once explained to me what it means to be an elected official. We're elaborate complaint bureaus for the most part. And the purpose of that is when you pull into a gas station and you suddenly see the gas price has gone up 40, 50 cents overnight, all you're left with is yelling at the gas pump. That's it. Gas pump doesn't respond. There's no reaction. It's a large corporation. They don't care. There's no responsiveness. With municipal connections, with municipal employees and civil servants, and using local contractors, they are responsive. That is one of the major selling points, is that actually, as Timothy said, your experience will be much enhanced. And in fact, actually now, if we continue on the roads that we have now, the infrastructure that we have now, with the same contracts that we have now, with the telecoms that we have right now, we will be left behind. We'll be the equivalent of having those little AOL discs that you used to get in newspapers and magazines, where everyone else is going to be able to pitch to any business, any healthcare provider, any educator, a community that has a robust, vibrant broadband system that allows people to basically use the tools that we already have. The fact is, the technology exists. We just can't experience it here for many of us. It's not like this is magic and it's coming. It's actually arrived. You can get better speeds in Belarus on your phone than you can get here in the western part of the state, for the most part, and for all the states, actually, for that matter. So I'm sorry. There's my rant. My question actually is, you know, what for me, this is an issue of social equity. It's mutual access to communities that are denied and deprived through the digital divide. How do you guys, what hope do you offer us as we try to, as we try to offer the access that our community desperately needs and is now critically needs, and right now there isn't much hope that we can offer them?
Can I piggyback on that, just so you can sort of answer these in tandem? Because along those lines, I have a question, which is, in your experience, what sort of flexibility or options does laying our own municipal fiber offer in terms of providing more affordable access for lower income households? So have you seen other municipalities use like a sliding scale or some way that there's a fee structure that allows better access for lower income families?
That would certainly be in the urban communities primarily a lot. And there are now, I'm sure you're aware, the emergency broadband benefit that's come out that is available to subsidize for lower income folks who don't have the ability to afford the cost of internet. Those kinds of grants and subsidies, but you can scale it. And obviously it's your network. You can scale it and subsidize it any way you choose to. But back to what was said a little earlier, the purpose of my coming on this panel, many of you probably don't know, I have another hat. So on my other hat, on my spiritual social justice side, I got involved in this for the purpose of the social impact and the social injustice and digital divide. So I'm here to help offer any kind of expertise I have based on being down in the poorest counties in Alabama, where 80% of the people have no internet, down in the middle of nowhere, to providing the citizens and residents of in Virginia, bringing them into the 21st century. We've done it. And we've done it not just with fiber, we've done it with fixed wireless and any kind of internet that we could bring to those folks so that that mother does not have to drive 40 minutes to a Panera Bread for her child to do homework. But we see the future of fiber, and we've been able to have some wonderful partners that now have joined us to say, look, we want to help you help communities bring fiber and the fiber infrastructure to their communities, because this is what they can build on. And so primarily you do have a hope. It is here. You do have a hope. And you just got folks here that just can assist you from their experience in helping you, lay out your network, design your network, build your network, and get it up and running, because it's definitely needed in your cities and communities.
Yeah, just to touch on that a little bit further, Timothy, you give that example of getting outside of Panera Bread. We had that recently in Cummington, where if you went by the Cummington Library at 8 o'clock at night, there was 30 to 40 cars parked around there so the kids could do their homework, or at least download it to then go home and do it, and then go back to the library later on to then upload it back. So these were communities that are here within half hour this capability. You kind of shake your head. We've been spoiled with Comcast and Charter, with their $10 to $15 annual increases just because they can, and things of that nature. And when you look at whether it's the socioeconomic side or anything like that, it then comes back to what Caitrin was saying earlier, and Timothy says, is the education. So when this product is available, you also find that in the lower income sections of town, they're slow to respond, slow to react. And they all have Comcast, they all have whatever, but you need to offer the programs, offer the hand-holding, go through whether it's Valley Opportunity Council, Salvation Army, things of that nature to help and reach out. So where they're getting support now, those people, and even to our own side on our electric and gas, who are the customers that are having trouble paying the bill, and how can you get them this program? As far as the emergency broadband benefit program, that the one piece that Timothy left out is that's a great program. You do $50 a month per customer. The one piece that's missing there is it's up to the provider. So in this case, Whip City Fiber has to opt into that program and agree to allow that benefit to their customers. So that shouldn't be an option. It should be automatic. Here's this program. We had Kimberly Longy. I recommend any of you to reach out to her in Plainfield. She's basically the chair of their municipal light plant, and she was a driving force, because at first we're looking into it and it's like, oh, well, that's a headache. We have to add this. We have to change this to our system. And I'm like, no, it's not a headache, because these customers are going to get $50. And for Plainfield, a town that has 400 buildings, so when you're looking at it as a premise or a point of interconnect in those cities, in those towns, there's only 400. But it was beneficial there for about 32 people, but she was adamant that had to work for those 32 people. And that benefit was there. And we did that for Plainfield. We're doing that for Westfield. We're doing it for the other 18 or 19 communities that we're serving. And if it helps one person there, it's well worth it. The other flip side of that selling point is you're guaranteed to get $50 for that, where you might not have been collecting that money before. So when you look at it from the business standpoint, it's there as a benefit, but the huge benefit is helping that.
And I was just going to add to what Tom said, and Tim, is internet, it's no longer a luxury, it's a necessity. And I know, going back to Kimberly Longy in Plainfield, so she's an advocate, and like Tom mentioned, she said she would talk to any of you, but her full-time job is advocating for the lower income folks. So we are enrolled as well as through Free Press, but we also offer the Lifeline. So that's a credit towards your ISP, your internet service provider bill, and it's $9.25. It's not a large amount, but it does offer something. And then we do have a verification process. So the subscribers upload any of the documentations that is required. And then circling back on what Bill said, and I'm surprised none of us mentioned it, but I know with Sean and Whip City Fiber, and there's no data caps. So that's also one of our selling points, is there's no data caps. I don't know why we never usually attack the provider, so we didn't even think of it. We just talk about the benefit of local. So that's definitely a selling point. But the emergency broadband benefit plan definitely will help Westfield and the hill towns and your communities. But I know that my understanding is once the pandemic is declared over, then 6 months after that, that's no longer a benefit. But there's certainly, in Westfield, we didn't have a tier based on the income, because what we like to focus on is this is our offering for everybody. So the neighbor's not getting a better discount, but it is something to look at. We do have to say, people pay their fiber bill before they pay their gas and electric bill. But we understand that there's differing offerings. So right now the Lifeline is definitely a solution, but Kimberly Longy for Free Press, if you look up Free Press, you'll see that she lobbies in Washington, DC, and just advocating not only for Plainfield, but across Western Mass.
Just to add to your point, the FCC commissioner last week on a call with our minority partners indicated that they're looking at making sure that this benefit continues after the pandemic. They're going to find a way to try to continue subsidizing. So that might be something that you all can keep in mind. It's definitely going to be something that they're working on. The FCC commissioner, she's the only first female commissioner. She was just so wonderful to talk to. And she indicated that this is something that's her heart, especially the other part of the educational part of it. You know, NTIA and all those other organizations that have been working to enhance the broadband quality for folks, for education, the homework, etc. So there are all other benefits that your towns and communities can get through what's already being drafted, so to speak, on the federal level, which will come down to the local towns and communities. I didn't mean to just jump back in there, but I wanted to tell you that.
Great. Do we have other questions?
Meeting.
Oh, you're in a meeting?
Yeah. Can I call you
Oh,
back?
okay. Yeah, just call me back.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
That's all right. If there are no other questions or any other comments from our great panelists, we could start to wrap up. Okay. So moving to closing, trying to, panelists, do you have closing remarks or final thoughts for us? Sean, would you like to go first?
Sure. Thank you, Gina. Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you to all of you and Rebecca for inviting me to join. I think this is a great event, and I think that I'm proud to work for a utility in a town that's taken the leap. And just let all of you know that 8 years ago, when we started this, when I was working for Westfield and Whip City Fiber, people thought we were crazy. You know, they're like, you'll never succeed. And, you know, look at where they're at now. And the same thing happened when we launched Fibersonic. You know, I actually still had people saying that to me. And the nation, the broadband communities have proven that, blown that out of the water across the nation. Even in incumbent communities, fiber is seeing a 50% or greater take rate. And it's just going to continue to climb. So all of you, you know, just be fortified in that fact that the broadband nationwide is just getting healthier and healthier, and don't be as concerned, because this is all about the risk and the risk tolerance. But thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Sean Fitzgerald from Fibersonic, South Hadley Light and Power, and Timothy Paul from OmniPoint Technologies. Final thoughts?
Just thank you all for Holyoke, West Agawam, and those cities that don't have it, Northampton, Springfield. Keep your momentum. As he said, this is something that you can take advantage of and seize this moment to bring this quality experience and affordable internet to your residents in the business community that you serve. But thanks for allowing me to come on and enjoy myself. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Caitrin Ferriter from Westfield Gas and Electric, Whip City Fiber.
Thank you, Gina. Thanks for inviting us on this panel. I know starting off with Sean in the pilot area, people didn't know if we could succeed, and then working with the Hill Towns, it's just such an accomplishment, the MLP to the MLP from start to finish. So we're always here to help and then get through the hurdles. So thanks again.
Thank you. And Thomas Flaherty of Westfield Gas and Electric and Whip City Fiber.
Thank you all for the opportunity. One thing that I do encourage all of you to go back to your city councilors and your mayors and start the process to become an MLP. It's for cities. It's a longer process. You're looking at two elections, and you need to start off with a vote of your city council and buy-in from your mayor, whether it's a weak mayor format or a strong mayor format. But if you start that process now, you get on the ballot through this November, get on the second ballot. Doesn't mean you have to do anything. Any cost to that other than the printing on the ballot, which you're printing those anyway. So I know it's an election year for the majority of you. It's a good plan or good platform to add to your running piece in your mailers, your involvement here today. But yes, go forward, become an MLP, and then you can start that process. I know in our working with a couple local communities, that's the process they're going to take, but then also at the same time get into running pilot programs to start the get their toe in the water with the knowledge that they're going to go quite far along in this process, and then continue to make that investment. It's a hard sell when you just look at the bottom line number as far as the bond, but when you look at the point of a 30% take rate will turn a profit in just a couple short years, and as you build or do a smart build, similar to what Westfield did, where we were successful, is you can start having income come in to help pay off as you go. I encourage that. Thank you.
Thank you. Rosemary, do you have some final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm sort of perplexed here because we have options, and I'm glad that I've listened to Sean and Tom. Tom, we've done this before. Agawam's looking at several different options. I'm glad that we have those options, but we really have to do something immediately. And that's the word that my task force is sending to our mayor, that we need to act, and we need to act now, whether it's with Whip City, whether it's with another company, but we do need to make a decision and go with it and run with it. But thank you for inviting me, Jesse and Rebecca. Nice to meet you, and Gina and Bill. Nice being with you, and Caitrin.
Thank you. Bill.
Well, I already did my rant, so I'll spare you that, and I appreciate your patience on that. I also want to thank particularly Rebecca and Jesse, because they basically played Paul Revere to us and inspired us to actually remember that we're actually a region and that we are strengthened by working together as opposed to separate silos. And in this conversation, it impacts everyone of every strata, just like the pandemic did. No one is left untouched or unaffected by the ability to communicate or not. And so that reminder served for me, at least. We hadn't discussed anything regionally for the most part since we've been disbanded as a county or counties. I mean, we still have the colloquial terms of cute little Hampden County and cute little Hampshire County and Berkshire County, but they mean nothing. There's no governments left. And as such, we don't get to work very well together. It was Boston that decided the counties were redundant and silly and not necessary. But of course, everyone who lives within 128 all live within 15 minutes of each other. That's not the case here. I'm very grateful for all of you and your work and your advocacy and the hope that you offered for us, because I think, as Rosemary pointed out, the sense of urgency is real, and it was made very plain during the pandemic, of course. Back in the day, 10, 15 years ago, when I was thinking about municipally managed broadband, I was thinking, well, okay, better cable options, and we can download pictures better, or so on and so forth. Now, it is something so much more. And particularly, as Timothy said, the social justice issue, there is if we don't seize this opportunity, the disparities that exist now will only be exaggerated and compounded. And there will be people who will it's not, it informs wealth, it informs health, it informs education. It's every dimension of the lives that we're supposed to share as a community. So thank you. Rebecca and Jesse, you work on the side of angels. Thank you. And all of you guys, I'm so grateful for you, the opportunity to spend the time here. And then speaking of this Brady Bunch format that didn't exist a year ago for most of us. So thanks again.
I want to thank our panelists. I really appreciate you taking the time to help walk us through this topic and for sharing your excellent experience with us. I'm very grateful for that. It's just really important that we explore our options and identify the best means for providing equal attainable access for our residents, for our students, and the businesses that we serve in our communities. And I want to join Bill in a very special thank you to Rebecca and Jesse and to all the other counselors. Bill said this very eloquently, but I will add that this collaborative cross-community engagement has been really lovely. And I think there is real power in working together for the mutual benefit of Western Mass. So I thank you so much for the work that you've put into this and for including me. This has been really great. Jesse?
Well, thank you so much to all of the panelists and to the counselors for coming together. I think that when we all sort of first began to talk about the challenges that we were seeing in our communities with internet access and with the data cap issue in the last year, it really caught on very quickly. When we first started, it was Holyoke and West Springfield and Springfield talking. And then very quickly, Northampton came into the conversation. Agawam came into the conversation. We've been connected with the great panel of experts that are here tonight. And I think that, what we know needs to happen is we need to continue these conversations and we need to go deeper in these conversations and bring more people into them. We need to bring our colleagues into them. We need to bring our constituents into them. We need to be having these conversations in our own communities and not forgetting that regional collaboration that I think we really need more of in the Valley and in Western Massachusetts. I think this can be a point for us to jump off. But I think especially for the city of Springfield and for cities like Springfield, we've heard a lot tonight that fiber is the future, right? And we also know that doing anything of this scale in these larger communities like ours is going to take a larger investment. It's going to take more time and more energy, but we cannot afford not to make that investment. We cannot afford, and it is not just for the city of Springfield or cities like Springfield to be left behind as internet continues to advance. We cannot allow that to happen. And I know that if we think big and work together, that we can accomplish those things, because at the end of the day, the people of Springfield, the people of the region, and people everywhere are tired of being nickel and dimed for an essential utility. And I think that's what we are seeing come forward now today. So I'm grateful to have been a part of this event tonight, and I'm looking forward to what we can do in the future. And to close it out, I'm glad to hand it over to our colleague and somebody who has taught me a lot as we've worked through this process and who I know is so passionate about it, Councilor Rebecca Lisi.
Thanks everyone for your comments, and thanks to all the panelists for being here this evening and taking time. My closing remarks were going to be very similar to where this conversation is winding up. So I think I'll riff a little bit and just say that I think the data cap issue caught on so quickly because at home during the pandemic, families became very aware of how much of their daily lives demanded that access to the internet. And it really is becoming a utility and essential service as opposed to a luxury, which is what it was thought of perhaps even 5 or 10 years ago. So I think that we are seeing that families really want to know that they can access that utility with dependability and with the speed that fiber offers. I think that through this conversation tonight, we're doing our best to sort of lay out a foundation for sort of, public education on what is fiber internet and why it's important to our everyday lives. And what we're learning is that it gives us as, ratepayers or users, much more autonomy, much more control, much more responsiveness, and also that friendly, familiar customer service when we are able to own that utility and own that service. And it also guards against those predatory fees and pay structures that the large corporate conglomerates can come in and attach to our users. So I think this evening we were able to learn from some of the successes that are out there that municipal light and power companies are having, and those private companies that are working alongside municipalities to help them through their deployments. And I think that what we're also hearing is that not all communities are the same. Not all communities are going to face the same challenges and opportunities. And so that I hope in the near future, we'll be able to have a few more conversations that dig down more deeply into perhaps what are the unique challenges and opportunities that urban communities face? What are the unique challenges and opportunities that those communities without an existing municipal light and power company are going to face? So the conversation on fiber, I think, will continue. And as many of the councilors alluded to this evening, regionalization is really coming forward through this conversation as a way that our individual communities, they often lose when they're pitted against those large corporate conglomerates. And when we can leverage the power and voices of our communities alongside of one another, that's how we can start to make some real changes and leverage our position vis-a-vis the big giants out there. So I hope that in addition to continuing this conversation on fiber, we get to move this conversation about regional cooperation and regional coordination to a set of more broad and more diverse issues. So again, I thank you for your time. I thank you for your participation, and I look forward to working with each and every one of you into the future. Thank you.